don't get much more iconic than the Mini Cooper, and this is the new generation version, which is available with petrol or electric power. I'm going to tell you all about the new model range, including the different variants available and the costs you need to consider, and also the best alternatives to the petrol and electric versions of this car. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and let's get to it. This is a pretty complex model range. There's the Mini Cooper C, which is a petrol-powered entry-level version, and it's available with 3 different trim grades. There's Core, there's Classic, and then there's Favoured. And there is a bit of difference in terms of the standard spec across those 3 models. And then there's the petrol-powered Cooper S, which gets a more powerful engine and plenty more torque, and also it's available with 3 different grades as well. There's Classic, there's Favoured, and JCW Sport. So if you are after a petrol model of a Mini Cooper, there are a few different choices for you. And then there's the electric versions as well, which are a little bit more expensive. There's the Mini Cooper E, and it is a more sedate model. And then there's the Mini Cooper SE, which has a bit more power, a bit more torque, and also a bigger battery, but also a bigger price point. Now, I'm not going to go through all the standard equipment inclusions because it would just take too long, but there are a few things I want to call out. You get alloy wheels in all grades. You also get LED headlights and daytime running lights and LED tail lights as well. And on the inside, you get a twist starter rather than a push button. You've also got a 9.4-inch touchscreen media system, and that's a circle, of course it is. And there's Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and plenty more features as well as that. Wireless charging is standard, and you also get a head-up display as standard and a heated steering wheel standard too. Now, if you spend a little bit more, you get things like electric seat adjustment with massaging and different interior trim. But I reckon that it is still pretty good value in the entry-level models. And in fact, I reckon across the range, there is a decent amount of value to be had in this Mini Cooper lineup, but I've got some great alternatives that you might also want to consider. Okay, so if you're looking for an electric alternative to the Mini Cooper, well, what about the tiny little Abarth 500e if you're after the sporty version, or the standard Fiat 500e, both of which are a lot of fun. They are full of character, full of charm, and have wow factor interiors which make them stand out from some of the rivals out there. And so does the pricing, and so does the EV driving range, because, well, you're not necessarily getting huge value for money if that is your metric. But if you are looking for something with charm and a tiny footprint, could be a really good choice for you. And if you're looking for a petrol car that has a tiny footprint and plenty of charm and costs a whole lot less, then you might want to go and check out the Kia Picanto. It's available in a few different trim grades, and the GT line version makes a lot of sense for someone who is looking for a stylish little car that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. It is petrol powered, it's got manual or automatic transmission options, and I reckon it stands out as a really good option if you are after something that's just tiny and city friendly. It could be the right car for you. Oh, and another really good petrol alternative you might want to consider is the Skoda Fabia. It's now available with a more affordable Select version, but there's also the sporty Monte Carlo one, which actually does seem pretty good value for money compared to the petrol versions of the Mini Cooper. But tell me which one you would pick in the comment section below. So this is the petrol version of the Mini Cooper, and it's not that much different to the existing version. It's just under 3.9 meters in length, and it still has a 2.5 meter wheelbase, or thereabouts. And the electric versions, well, they're actually different. They've got a longer wheelbase, and that's because they're built on a different platform, and they're actually a little bit shorter, nose to tail. So the proportions are just ever so slightly different, but all versions are very, very tiny. So that's the whole point of a Mini, right? So let's have a look in the boot and see what we are dealing with. Now, all versions, electric or petrol, have the same boot capacity. You'll see the number on your screen now. And yes, that is small. It's actually quite a compact boot, and there's not a whole lot to talk about in here except for the fact that you do have a false floor, and you've got a tire repair kit and a first aid kit underneath there. But otherwise, you've got a light, and that's kind of about it when it comes to what's happening in the boot. So look, I think it's going to be practical enough for singles, or maybe as a second or third car for your family. But if you have a family, you might be better off looking at the Mini Countryman as your only Mini if you're only going to have one. All right, so this is the interior of the new generation Mini Cooper. This one here is the petrol model, and I reckon it looks absolutely fantastic. Just have a look at some of the finishes on offer in this version. Now this is a Cooper S Favored Edition, so you're getting a few elements that are a bit different to the other trim levels. Things like this coppery look finish on the trim elements of the steering wheel and on the badge. And you've also got different design elements up here on the dashboard. You can see the ambient lighting coming through there underneath on the dashboard, which is a fabric finish, and it looks absolutely amazing. Looks even better at night. Down here is a bit different to the versions with the electric powertrain, and look, I don't think that it's necessarily that big of a deal. It's just a little bit different because, well, this one is the petrol one. So you do have a few elements to this cabin which are a little bit peculiar. So this is your twist dial key essentially for your engine starter. Look, I won't turn it on because it'll be too noisy. But look, there's also your park button there, your gear selector is there. That button right there is your experiences button. So let's see what happens when you hit that button. You can go through different modes that you might want to drive in. You can personalize things as well. So there is a personal mode there, so you can set a photo on the screen if you want to. And go-kart mode, which is the fun one. Yes, so depending on which experience mode you're in, it will determine what the screen looks like and how you interact with it. But it is a pretty in-depth and interesting design element to this car, which makes it even more characterful. So you can see the ambient lighting has changed because we've changed drive modes. And when you're driving, it changes the way the car drives as well, to a degree at least. Right, so this screen is very complex. There's a lot going on here. I'll just go into one of the menu screens here, or you've got sat nav. So here, just have a look at how many menus you've got to play with on this screen. It is intense. This is a tech heavy car and they haven't missed the mark there. So look, there's other elements to the screen which do take a little bit of learning. Sat nav, look, you've got your climate controls there, so you don't have to dive through screens to jump to those quick controls like your climate control. And I love that. I think that it adds something to this experience. And yes, you do have a heated steering wheel as standard, which is really cool. This version also comes with heated seats, and also they have electric seat adjustment and massaging as well. So look, you're not missing out when it comes to the gear, and I reckon that it is an interesting design. There's no doubt about that. It will take a bit of learning to get used to this screen, and it'll also take a little bit of learning to get used to the fact that you don't have a traditional instrument cluster in front of the steering wheel, but you do have a head-up display. And it is standard on all grades, and that is a good thing, because if it was just the speedo, which shows up here when you're driving, it wouldn't be ideal, I don't think. Now, I want to show you a couple of other things about the cabin. So you've got some cup holders down there. That is your wireless phone charger, and there's a little I guess, attachment strap there, so you can put it in place and it won't move around. There's a little cubby between the seats here where you can put your key if you want to, and you've also got a center arm rest, but it doesn't actually open and it doesn't move, so it's sort of just a static armrest. Underneath there you've got some USB ports and a 12 volt, and in the doors there are, well, pretty small pockets, but you can fit a bottle in there if you really need to. It just might rattle around, so maybe get used to that. There's also these beautifully designed seats, which might look like leather, but they're not. They're a fake leather trim, because that's the eco-credential thing happening in the new generation Mini range. There's no cows harmed in the making of this car, and there's lots of recycled materials as well. Now, this version also comes with a dual sunroof, so you've got an opening section at the front and another glass section at the back with a shade, which is kind of cool. So let's take a look in the back and see what the comfort is like, if there is any. So this seat I've set to a position where I could drive, right? And it's not necessarily super comfortable. My knees are hard up against the seat ahead, and you can see for yourself that headroom is tight. I'm 6 foot tall, and anyone my height or taller will struggle back here. But it's not a family car, and if you have tall teenagers, well, there is the Countryman, and it is a much more spacious SUV. So if that's what you need, it could be a better choice for you. Now let's have a look at the back seat itself. Look, there's only 2 seats, 2 seat belts, and ISOFIX points in the window seats. And also, of course, you've got top tethers as well. But look, this middle section here is just sort of a hump to keep you in place, I guess. You don't get directional vents, you just get a bottle holder there. You've got armrests on the side, but they're a scratchy plastic. There's no map pockets, so it is a pretty bare bones experience back here. But like I said, If you are looking for a more luxurious experience in your Mini, well, there's the Countryman, and there's going to be the Aceman as well. Make sure you've hit subscribe and rang the bell to keep up to date with all of my reviews, and that'll notify you when I drive the Mini Aceman. I'll also probably be driving the 5-door version of the Mini Cooper as well. So if you are interested in Minis, make sure you subscribe. Okay, let's talk about the petrol versions of the Mini Cooper first. So the Cooper C has a 1.5 litre, 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine with a 7-speed dual clutch auto and front wheel drive. You'll see the outputs on your screen now. It's a little bit less powerful and a little bit slower than this one, which is the Cooper S with a 2-litre, 4-cylinder turbo petrol, more power, more torque, still with a 7-speed dual clutch auto and front wheel drive, but a much faster 0 to 100 time. And let's talk about the EV versions now as well. So the Cooper E has a single front-mounted electric motor with 135 kilowatts and 290 Newton meters, 0 to 100 in 7.3 seconds, and it's front-wheel drive with a single-speed transmission. This one here is the Cooper SE, and it also has a single motor front-wheel drive layout. Its electric motor produces 160 kilowatts and 330 Newton meters, and a 0 to 100 time of 6.7 seconds, just a smidge slower than the Cooper S Petrol. The Cooper E, the base model one, has a smaller battery pack, a 41 kilowatt hour battery. You'll see the range for it on your screen now. That's the WLTP rated range. And the Cooper SE, which is this one here, gets a bigger 54 kilowatt hour battery pack with more EV driving range. Now let's talk about charging. Charge port is on this side of the car. Just pop it open. So 11 kilowatts for your AC charging. That's the one at the top. And that is pretty decent for an electric car at this price point. So if you can get access to an 11 kilowatt AC charger, you will be able to do a recharge to 80% in 4.5 hours for the E and 5 hours 15 for the SE. And yes, there's also DC charging, which is the bottom one. So that's for your rapid charging. And the DC rate for the Cooper E is 75 kilowatts, 95 kilowatts for the Cooper SE, and it should take about half an hour, no matter which version you pick when it comes to charging. So look, those numbers are pretty good, I reckon, for a car like this, and let's go and see what it's like to drive. But actually, we're going to start in the petrol model first. You've probably already come to the realization, if you've made it this far in the video, that today it's gross outside. It is cold, it is raining, it is a Melbourne winter day par excellence, and yes, it's not necessarily the sort of day that I longed to have while driving this new generation Mini, but we're about to go away from the suburbs, away from the industrial area where we were, to see what it's like on more of a open road section. So look, to this point, I've driven across a few different scenarios, bit of urban stop-start, that sort of thing, and just been leaving it in one of the more sedate drive modes. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with the comfort and drivability of this car in the normal drive mode. But like, a Mini should be fun no matter what the day is, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, no matter what the weather's like, horrible or lovable. And let's see if it can live up to that when we put it into go-kart mode, because that's the mode that you want to be in, right? You'll hear it go, woohoo! And what that means is, yes, the fun factor has been upped. The steering gets more direct, the suspension gets firmer, and the powertrain gets far zestier in terms of its responsiveness. So the throttle response is much more assertive, and the gear shifts change as well. Strangely enough, there are no paddle shifters, which might actually be a bit annoying for the real enthusiasts out there. But look, I still think that this is a fun car to drive, and that sounds fantastic too. I guess the biggest issue with the petrol version in particular, and also the EV, but I'll get to that in a sec, is getting the power down to the ground, because front wheel drive plus heaps of power and torque, sometimes that means lots and lots of tyre squeal and a lack of traction or grip at the front. So yeah, it can be a little bit perilous at times when you are putting your foot down in the wet, but it's still fun. I'm not saying that it's not fun, just that it maybe could be better in terms of managing getting the grunt down to the ground. It's more noticeable when you are taking off from a standstill or something like that. When you're powering down at pace, you're not necessarily going to spin the wheels all that often, but it's still something you want to keep in mind because it does keep you on your toes a little bit. And I guess that's the fun factor element of this car. You do feel like you are on your toes a little, and I like that about it. I like that a lot. Now, I also drove the Cooper SE electric version, and look, it's the more powerful model, and let me say that I reckon you'll have to rotate your tires fairly regularly because it does struggle to get the power down a little bit at times. It's still fun to drive, but it does feel a bit more fidgety and firm over most surfaces. So I reckon if you are after something that's maybe a little bit more subtle and likable on a daily driving basis, maybe the petrol model might be a bit better. But the EV, it's heavier and it does have a little bit of an impact on the drive experience. Even though it does have a longer wheelbase, it is still pretty firm. There are a few other considerations you might want to keep in mind. There is a bit of tyre roar that comes into the cabin, and yes, there is also some engine noise in the sportier driving modes. Now, engine, that's in the petrol versions. In the EVs, there's also a bit of a soundtrack. When you are driving in go-kart mode in particular, you will notice that it is pretty vocal and kind of fun. I actually really like the soundtrack to it. Here's a little clip from when I was having a bit of fun before in some corners. Yes, that's an overrun simulation. So yes, it is a fun experience. Let's go again. I can see why you might choose the EV instead of the petrol version. This is... it's character in a different way. I really think that Mini has absolutely nailed it when it comes to trying to encapsulate the fun factor that you get in a Mini. So yeah, it does make you laugh, and I do like the drive experience in this car, and I reckon you will too if you're looking something. So yeah, it is a bit of a laugh. I had a lot of fun driving the EV in some pretty treacherous conditions, I have to say, and yeah, this is the sort of car that eggs you on and makes you want to have a bit of fun. So if that's the sort of car you're looking for, tick. Another thing I didn't call out in the petrol model, but I will call out now, is this steering wheel is too fat. There is like no gripability to it because the hand grips, they're too big. And I don't have tiny hands, but you know, I'm not Donald Trump, but yeah, I reckon that I'm not Kawhi Leonard either. So I don't think you're getting the ideal grip factor on the steering wheel. It's a pretty slippery material as well. It's a fake leather trim. So yeah, that is one thing that doesn't light my fire in terms of the urban drive experience. I'll just also add that I do think that the petrol model does feel more nimble, lighter, and a little bit more, let's say, chuckable and enthusiastic in corners. When you are having a bit of a fun punt, you will notice that it is just a bit easier to throw around. And if that's what you like, cool. But the EV model does feel just a bit more weighty and I have to say, a touch more unwieldy as a result of that. Okay, on your screen you'll see the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the Cooper C models, and they are the less powerful models, remember? And then there's the Cooper S, which gets the bigger, more powerful engine. You see the number for it on your screen. That's the official combined cycle fuel consumption number, so what you should be able to achieve across a mix of driving. And if you're wondering what I've achieved over this launch drive across a mix of driving, including a fair bit of horrible slow speed, traffic and raininess, but also a couple of spirited stints, you'll see the number on your screen now. And look, daily, I reckon that is an achievable figure, provided you aren't finding the twistiest way to get everywhere you want to go, and you're not planting your foot all the way it will go down as well. So look, I think that's pretty good, don't you? Right, so that's the petrol models covered. Let's talk about the EV efficiency. And just like petrol, the lower the number, the better. We're talking kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, not litres. And you'll see on your screen the official Cooper E number. And that is a pretty decent number. The Cooper SE, it's the more powerful version. You'll see that on your screen now for the official claimed number. And that is, like I said, decent for a little car like this. And if you're wondering what I saw across a mix of driving, including some pretty spirited driving over a longer stint in that car, you'll see it on your screen now. And I was okay with that. If I could achieve that every day while driving it like I was, I will say that I would be a pretty happy Mini Cooper SE owner. There is no ANCAP or Euro ANCAP rating just yet for the new generation Mini Cooper range, but across the range, there is a decent amount of standard safety tech. In the base model grade, you're getting things like autonomous emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, a reversing camera, and parking sensors as well. If you spend up to one of the higher grade versions though, you are getting a few extra features: adaptive cruise control, a surround view camera system, and a few other things like speed limit assistance and also lane keeping assistance for traffic jams and stuff like that. So it might make a bit more sense to spend just a little bit more to get into something above the core grade. All right, let's talk about ownership when it comes to the Mini Cooper range. So you've got a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty for the car itself, and if you choose one of the EV models, you also get an 8-year battery warranty too. Roadside assistance, well, you get a bit when you choose the petrol model, but you get more if you choose an EV. And when it comes to the electric versions, there's also better service options available. You can either prepay a 4-year or a 6-year service plan, and it is a much more affordable ownership option compared to the petrol version. So it might stack up to you to choose the petrol one if you are looking to save a little bit of money on the initial outlay, but the ongoing costs for the EV are pretty appealing. The new generation Mini Cooper definitely lives up to the existing models. It is fun, it makes you smile, and you will love it if you are into the whole go-kart feeling thing. It is a firm riding thing. It's not the most practical car you could choose, but there is a lot of value depending on which version you pick. Now, would you go for a petrol or electric model? Let me know in the comments, and if there's any other cars you'd like me to review, hit me up and I'll see if I can do it for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.